God, I offer myself to you to build with me and to do with me as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I will help of your power, your love, and your way of life. May I do your will always. My name is Brenda. I'm an alcoholic. Very glad to be here. I come bearing tidings of comfort and joy. Very grateful to Glenn for the invitation and for hopefully our reconnection going forward. I'd love to stay in touch with you. I see some friends on here. You're more than I deserve. That you have continued the journey with me and continued to support whatever efforts and shenanigans I might be up to. There are folks on here this morning that I don't recognize, and I welcome you, especially if you're new, especially if you're on day 27 and feeling a little squirrely. I want you to know that just by way of a little disclaimer, I sobered up July 3rd of 1990, and in a month or so, we'll have 34 years sober. I know I got sober when I was 3, and that's what's leading to my looking so good after 33 years. But I want you to know that in the course of where I am right now, I have given myself permission to be imperfect and enough at the same time. I often need help to maintain a rational perspective. And even after all this time, I reserve the right to cry, to make mistakes, to have problems, and to not always have all my answers. And rather than the time I've been here, the important thing to me is what I'm doing with that time now. And this is my sobriety station with you this morning. I have been able, by the grace of God, to get up every morning and answer roll. I have understood in deeper ways that God will lead me where God needs me. I'm also very well aware that no matter how long we all stay in recovery, no matter how many meetings we make, no matter how, we are never coming this way again. In the set of circumstances under which we find ourselves, we're not coming this way again. And so if I have to sit in a meeting and listen to somebody talk for way too friggin' long, another 50 minutes or so, I want it to be of value. I want it to be beautiful. I want it to be useful. I want it to be something that not only moves me, but changes me. And so when we read how it works, I'm not supposed to get on here today and tell you what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. Those are not the directions in the book. It does not say what was it like, what happened, and what's it like now. The book actually says our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like today. And so I'm so grateful to God that I'm able to get on this meeting today, and not have to say to you, you know, I've been sober for 33 years, but I'm not very well acquainted with the steps. I don't have to get here this morning and tell you that. I don't have to get on here and say, you know what, I've been sober for 33 years, and I've done so without sponsorship. I'm not going to sit on here this morning because God is good to me and say I've been sober all this time, but I don't have any experience in sponsoring women. I don't have any experience in traveling to conferences. I don't have any experience in surrendering that is not my story. And that has not been my story since the time I got sober. I've never taken a vacation from AA. One time I was mad and I didn't come to meeting for like 2 days. And it's not because I was afraid to drink. I was afraid to get separated. That's hell. That's a definition of hell, to get separated from God again, to get separated from myself, to feel separated from the truth. And so I share when my friends hear me that the criteria for me sharing in any meeting or having a workshop or whatever are two things. One, I want it to be something that's not just run-of-the-mill, mediocre. You know what? I'm not judging it. I'm just saying I want the Cool Whip, right? If everybody else is bringing chips, I want to be the guacamole. Mira, todo el sabor ahí está. Shut up, I took a hard left. Did y'all hear that? And so I've been present and accounted for. And so when I talk to you about what I was like, I was these things because it was my nature, and secondly, because I consumed enough alcohol to get lost. I lost my place in the world. One of the worst things that happened to me when I was drinking is that I became somebody else besides my mother and father's daughter. You know, the one they brought home from the nursery and thought that would be a woman who would be led by God, a woman who would follow their example into God's arms. And alcoholism made that impossible. What I was like was that I was some version of myself that could not hold light. I drank because I didn't want to feel the life I had. I drank because I didn't know how to emotionally and honestly respond to the situations in my life. I drank because I wanted the shortcut. Let's just tell the truth. Because I thought that it would be okay with me to leave the earth at the same depth that I arrived in. And so I lied, and I made people who loved me feel like they'd made a mistake. I was self-seeking and self-searching and looking for ways to get ahead. I heard somebody say the other day that self-knowledge is everything I know about myself minus God. And so the way I drank alcohol was that I drank enough alcohol to not need you. I drank enough alcohol to not need God. I drank enough alcohol to not need my own life. And it took me down every alley it wanted to. I was 24 when I got sober. It's 21, the legal drinking age. And people felt sorry for me. They're like, man, you only got to drink for 3 years? I'm like, yeah. That wasn't the truth. I started drinking when I was 12. So by the time I had to sober up at 24, I'd already put in 12 years. And in those 12 years, I drank enough to disappear. I disappeared from my own life and from the landscape of my family's life. And what happened when I was 24 was that I knew it was over. The book calls it the jumping off place. I could no longer drink alcohol, and I could not imagine having a life without it. It says, we will wish for the end. That's what happened. That's what happened. I got to a place where I wished for the end. I remember laying on the ground at one particular point, close to the bottom, and wanting to just be eaten in by the earth and just die. What happened was I wanted to die, and I was 24 years old. Now, the beautiful thing about being able to share that with you is that those of you who know me know that I'm going to spend the rest of the time together telling you how God has saved me, the life I have now, what a life looks like. And you may decide you don't want what I tell the story. Look, in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a whole bunch of lights, and all the lights attract different bugs. And if you get on here today and you're like, yeah, I don't really get that, lady. That's not my story. It's just because I'm not your light. Stay, find your light. And you're not my bug, as it turns out. So it works out beautifully. You're like, y'all are going to call your friends and say, I don't know, halfway through the thing, she's talking about insects. So I get to now tell you, how did you stay, Brenda? How did you stay through all of that? And I'm going to tell you, in my experience, there's only one way to work the steps wrong. Only one way. Everything else is fair game. But there is only one way in my life for me to work the steps wrong. And that is to leave them undone. As long as God will honor the effort and is not at all worried about the outcome. Because God always knows the outcome. Let me get something straight though. Sometimes people are like, I remember I went to go speak somewhere up north, up in the Northeast, and there was travel issues. I literally arrived at the place where I was speaking as they were reading how it works. And so I'm walking up to the stage. The young lady who's hosting me is walking behind me, and I say, I'm asking her, are these folks newcomers? Do you tend to have a lot of old timers? Where are we? And the last thing she said to me before I went up on the stage, she goes, oh, and whatever you do, don't mention God. And I turned around and I looked at her and I said, oh, crap, you got the wrong speaker. But I also tell the story. I had a friend going through a really hard time. And I visited with her on the phone and I wanted to send her a text. And I said, God loves you. God loves you. God loves you. And I hit send. And my phone auto-corrected to Bob loves you. Bob loves you. Bob loves you. She said, come over later. Bring Bob. And so I can only tell you that God doesn't care what name I use. I'm only referencing whatever it is that can make lightning. I'm only referencing whatever it is that can take a seed and turn it into a tomato, a sperm and an egg and turn it into a life. I don't know what else to call it. Bob apparently works. And so I don't want the poverty of my language to get in the way of the message. And the message is, these are the things I've had to do to awaken. Now, some of y'all looking at me like, lady, you've been here for 33 years. You should try decaf. I'm supposed to be dead. I'm supposed to be dead. And here I am, live and in living color, and grateful to God, and enthusiastic and in love with the ways my own surrender, the ways my own consent, the way my own God has changed my life. I'd go to a book study and we get the book out, and I maybe somebody bought me one. There's a good chance I'd stole it. But we'd read like 2 paragraphs, and then people were sharing, and I couldn't remember what we just read. There was so much disconnect with me and the third dimension when I got here. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't read. I was 24 years old, dying from alcoholism. And I was trying to, I went to my first women's meeting on a Friday night. And they used to be a candlelight meeting, so it was kind of dark in there. I think maybe that's why I picked it. And they're like, is there anybody new today? And I'm like, I was not raising my hand. Now, those women, I found out later, had been sitting together. They understood I was the only person that was new that night, but I wasn't about to divulge any information. And I would go to meetings and not understand. And I would go to meetings and people would stop me and welcome me back. And I would go to meetings and feel like I didn't fit. What a impoverished place to be. That time between when I put down a drink and pick up a higher power. That space. I didn't know that I could outweigh a craving. My mind would say drink and my body would drink. My mind would say lie and my spirit would lie. I did not know that I could outweigh a craving for alcohol. And next thing I know, I'm 5 days sober, I'm 7 days sober. Um, and I want you to know there's a reason that Alcoholics Anonymous gives chips out at 30 days and 60 days and 90 days. Those dates weren't just picked arbitrarily. There's medical information that says that something happens in the physical body of an alcoholic after they've been abstinent for 30 days. And something important happens in the body of an alcoholic after they have been withdrawn for 60 days. And so the day before, 29, 59, 89, I was always so scared, and I felt weird, and I felt out of sorts, and I felt inside my body is an alcoholic who, if not addressed, see, look, my alcoholic is keeping bad company with my ego. And my ego would say to me, well, hell, you made it 29 days. Clearly, you're not an alcoholic. Or, you've been sober all this time, and these people don't really appreciate your flavor. Or, you've been sober for this amount of time, and my ego still this morning has the same job it had on July the 3rd of 1990, and that is to separate me from God. It will, there's a friend of mine that says, my ego wants me dead, but it will settle for me being drunk. So I can't jump on a Zoom meeting and then get on another Zoom meeting either later or tomorrow, or get on another Zoom meeting tomorrow and then the day after and pretend like I don't have any work to do between the meetings. Folks who know me know that I try and speak only twice a month. And that's because the other 28 days, I got to go out and be the person I told you I was. In every Zoom square, at every podium, I arrive there fresh and crispy with new information. I tell people, don't be pissed off about something I said last week. I already slept. I've had a new experience. And you're still mad about what I said then. My life is in constant motion. Now, some of you on here, I love that there's only page 1 of pictures. Some of you on here are already looking at me like you mad. I'm sorry that you're looking at me like you mad, but I want you to know that I was lost. All was lost. What has to happen to a life that it wants to choose death at the age of 24? And quite frankly, I was a kind of alcoholic that had wished for death many years before that. I thought that what was going to be required was that I was going to be asked to live the life I had sober. And I knew that that was impossible. No matter what I learned, no matter what I was subjected to, I knew that there was no way that I could live the life I had sober. What I didn't understand and wish somebody had said out loud was, these people were not asking me to live the life I had sober. They were telling me that if I got sober, I'd have a new life. I'd have a new one. That the life I left was in fact behind me, and the will of God is always ahead of me. I'm one of 9 children. I have 6 sisters, 2 brothers. We are all still alive, except one of my brothers passed in 2012. I tell God he took the good one and left me the dummy. I didn't know that when they were telling me to straighten the chairs and pick up the ashtrays and wash out the coffee cups, and I didn't know that what we were doing that day wasn't washing the cups. wasn't chairing a meeting. What we were doing those days was preparing me for the days that were ahead of me. I need to be able to get on here today and tell you I have other responses to my life besides a drink and rage. There's a problem for me if I've been here all this time and I'm still responding to my life only in the ways I knew to respond when I got here. Don't get me wrong. You pissed me off, I'm going to tell you something in 2 languages and walk the hell away from you. That's still going to happen. But what I'm telling you is that that's not the only thing that can happen. I can also come to you and say, I don't understand what you just said. It makes me feel separate from you. Feeling separate from you hurts my heart in a way I don't have words for. I need to leave, and I will call you in the next 5 hours and plan a time for us to come back to this space. I was talking to a friend this morning, and last night, she's relatively a new friend, and last night I thought to myself, God, I'm trying to be friends with this person, but I just realized that the only time I talk to her is when I call her. I don't think she's ever called me. I just left several relationships where I was the only one doing all the work. I just walked out of those. A friend of mine used to have a message on her phone, recorder, and it says, "Hello, I'm not here right now. I've gone out to make some changes. If I don't call you back, consider yourself to have been one of those changes." I'm not advocating that. But the truth is and then she calls this morning. She calls this morning and says, "You've been on my heart. And I've talked myself out of calling you like 87 times because I can't believe that I would be worthy of your friendship. Because I can't believe that it's God's will that I interrupt your busy life." And I told her the truth. I said, just last night, I said to God, I didn't know that we were getting me ready to be sober when my father died. I didn't know that the work I was doing was getting me ready to hold my mother's hand as she passed away. I didn't know when I was going to those cafes for coffee and those late nights, staying up for the meeting, after the meeting, and becoming a sponsor and doing the work in the book. I didn't know that we were on our way to helping me be the best person I could be when I divorced my wife. I didn't know that we were on our way to helping and building the capacity within me that when you experience loss, I know how to stay in that space with you. One of the other things that I don't usually spend my time doing when I get to share about what it was like and what I'm like now is that I'm not one of those speakers that takes you through the steps. I just want to be able to stand at this and tell you what my life looks like after doing the work. I had to go 1 through 12 on alcohol, 1 through 12 on alcohol, 1 through 12 on alcohol, 1 through 12 on alcohol. And what I'm finding now is that people are doing 1 through 12 on alcohol. Now I'm going to do 1 through 12 on my relationship with my mom. Then I'm going to do 1 through 12. And in essence, because I had to get proficient at it. It had to be muscle memory. That when somebody did something that I found offensive, that my first response was to admit that I'm powerless and that if I pick that up, I will be unmanageable. That if somebody betrays me, that if somebody hurts me, if somebody does that, my first initial response must be that I'm powerless over that and I'm powerless over them and my life is unmanageable. And then about that thing, I have to come and believe that God can restore me to sanity. And then I have to get to a place where I can ask. And so But I had to get proficient at working the steps on my alcoholism. And what I have found is that people, and I can share this because it's my experience. So I work with tons of folks, but what they do is that they go, okay, I'm going to work 1 through 12 on my boss. And in essence, what they do is that they get 1 through 5 and then leave the work to go work the 12 steps on their children. And then they work up to 5 and then they go back and do the work. And so they're stuck. They're stuck on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's why that's a problem for me in my life. Because the work and the change and you know that fruit is the last thing that grows on a fruit tree? It's like the last thing that grows. And so in step 6, all of the literature, the 12 and 12, the big book, all talk about this is it. This is the step. You read it before your meeting that separates the men from the boys. This is the step. If when I go to a conference and we do the sobriety countdown and we get to year 6, 7, 8, 9, and folks start resurfacing at 10. Well, what I know about that in my life is that the reason that step 6 is so different from the other ones is that it is the first time that I am invited to approach God all by myself. My home group doesn't have to come. My sponsor's not coming. My other teachers aren't coming. Step 6 is the first time that God extends an invitation for my presence. And I have to, and I have the opportunity to RSVP. I have the opportunity to say, yes, God, I would love to spend some time with you. I don't want to be 33 years sober and never having truly at depth accepted the invitation to come alone into God's presence. And the reason that coming alone is so important is because of step 7. Step 7 is the first time that I am asked to directly ask something of God. It's the first time that I directly speak to God. I have been able in my relationships to say to another human, I can't be in this relationship anymore, of any flavor, of any dimension. You know, just it's about all of that. And so I would say to them, I cannot be in this relationship because I do not possess the tools with which to be successful. I can't stay in this relationship because I do not possess the tools necessary for this to be successful. I've had to walk away from folks because there's a line that says, givers have to set limits because takers never will. The book talks about a relationship with God being roomy and all-inclusive. So when I ask the question, is my spiritual practice working or not, I should be able to look at my own life and answer that question. Did my life get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller as I got older and older and older and older in years of sobriety? Did my spiritual practice open my life up to people? Do I have a practice that allows me to look at every human being I see and welcome them? I often tell people, if you've been sitting around Alcoholics Anonymous all comfortable and everything, I'm here to make you uncomfortable. And if you've been sitting in Alcoholics Anonymous all these years feeling uncomfortable, I'm here to make you feel comfortable. When my father died, I was on my knees next to his bed with my hand on his chest and my other hand over his eyes because he was so afraid to die. And I had prayed every prayer, and I had stood in all that silence, and I had surrendered at depth. The only thing I knew to give my father in those last hours were that I had my hand on his chest and the other one over his eyes, and I said to him, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover. My father died listening to how it works. Because at the end of it, what I had to give my father was what I had received from you. I had the opportunity to see my mother to the end. I had arrived back in my hometown. I walked into my mom's home, and my brothers and sisters who had been there, they all looked so exhausted. They looked afraid. And so I said to them, I said, why don't you all just find somewhere to sleep? Everybody lie down. I've been sitting all day and traveling. Let me sit with mom. No, they knew. They knew that she was going to die that night. And they just needed me to go walk her through that door. And that's what happened. I sat there, pulled a chair up next to my mom's bed. I held her hand, went over all of the memories that we'd experienced as a family. And for the last couple hours, I was able to say to her, Mom, we will all be well. You will be missed. It will be as if the sun fell out of the sky. But we will be all right. You have lived a long and faithful life, and you can go if you need to. Go in peace. And my mom, tears would just stream down her sides of her face, and I had Kleenexes, and I wiped my mother's tears, and then listened to her take her last few breaths. I accidentally turned my world and my life over to God when I got here. I was just nonchalantly reading the big book, and when I got to the point where it says, God, I offer myself to you, and said that prayer, I was only reading. I was not praying, but God was taking no chances. He's like, that sounds like a prayer, go! And I accidentally surrendered my life to God. I ended up going to college. I'm one of 9. I was the first one because my older brothers and sisters had taken their place and then let me stand on their shoulders. They graduated and became a teacher. I have 18 years teaching 12-year-olds because I needed somebody like me when I was 12. I had taught for 10 years. I thought I'd already paid back my karmic debt to the nuns at the Catholic school. So I left to go do something else. I was freelancing. I love working. I love working, and I love working in such a way. I went to go do some work with corporations. There's a reason that the suicide rate is the highest at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. Go look, the data's out already. The suicide rate is the highest at 9 o'clock on Monday mornings because it's when people decide, I can't go do it one more day. And so what I would do is go into companies and help them look at their processes and help them figure out how to care for the people that care for the stuff they care about, right? Which is their bottom line. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good. And I remember saying to an executive in a company, he says to me, he goes, because I was talking to him about how important it is to care for the people who care about his stuff. And he says, do you think that I can teach people to care? I said, sir, I don't think you can teach them how to care. I think I can teach them how to care. He says, what makes you think that I can't teach them to care? I said, because you don't care. I can't teach people to do something I'm not. So when I'm sponsoring women, I tell them, if ever I give you a direction, if ever I make a suggestion about my own experience, you have every right to say to me, Brenda, tell me about what happened when you did that. Because if not, I'm just sharing my best plans, and those got me to treatment. And so I don't want to be one of those people sitting in rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, incapable to run out and greet my own life. I didn't know. I didn't know that that's what I was doing. Every day I get up and say, God, help me with the traffic signs, right? The traffic signs of pause, merge, and yield. I'm unfamiliar with those. I don't know how to pause. I only know how to step on the pedal when the light turns yellow. Do you know that that's not what that means? When the light turns yellow, it's not like, hey, hurry up, you're about to get crushed. No, the yellow light means pause, because it's about to turn red. And the red means it's not your turn. And the worst thing an alcoholic can think is that it's not your turn. It's always my turn. Pause, merge. What? Merge means the traffic is already running and I'm just going to go and find my place in it. Merge means the relationships in my family are all moving along and I'm just going to be a part of that. I didn't know how to merge, not without causing a catastrophe in a 16-car pileup. And then I didn't know how to yield. Yield means you go first. I often tell people that if you really want to know who I am, turn down the volume. Don't listen to what I say. Pay attention to what I do. I used to have a sponsor that said, you can pretend to care, but you can't pretend to show up. Right? And so either I'm the person I told you I was, or I'm not. And I wish that I could tell you that for those 33 years, the reason that I have this love affair with God, this love affair with love, this love affair with truth, I wish I could tell you that I had gotten here because everything worked out my way. I'm here to tell you that I am in this place in spite of the path and what I've experienced. I had experience in turning my will and my life over to fear. So I knew how. I was just turning it over to the wrong thing. The power I have in my life right now is based solely on the things I've allowed myself to experience. I tell everybody that they don't make parachutes that open on land. Right? So when I got my parachute, I had to take all the stickers and the tags and the price tag and all that, and then I have to jump off a cliff. I have to jump off a cliff. And then, just at the right time, I have to pull the cord and the parachute opens. I have a spiritual parachute. I don't want to walk around 33 years sober with the price tag on it. Walking around AA, going to all these meetings, being all of this right here. And somebody should walk up to me and go, hey, how long have you been here? And I'm like, 33 years. Did you ever take the tag off your parachute? That means you haven't jumped from anywhere? Now, of course, just remember, I'm just talking about me. Brenda, you haven't jumped from anywhere? There's a little poster that says, sometimes the only mode of transportation is a leap of faith. It's hard to feel pain and still harder to feel nothing. So I'm just going to finish up with this. I spent my whole I recently ran into a lady here at my home group, and she looks at me and she says, is your name Brenda? Look, I'm sober, but I'm like, who's asking? You know, why you want to know? She said, did you used to live in so and so like 20 years ago? That was when I got sober, tried to get sober the first time. I said, yeah, that was me. I said, I recognize your eyes. She's like, oh my God, you're still here? Yes, I'm still here. She said, the thing I remember was two things about you. One, you give the best hugs in the entire world. And the other thing was that you had all this hope. And then she says to me, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Have you had hope all this time? The answer to that is yes, I have had hope all this time. Not because I'm special, not because God loves me more, but the other option was to cease and desist living, and I wasn't about that. God saved my life. God spared me, and I have done everything I can in honor of that miracle. I surrender every day. I don't talk about my alcoholism like it was something I had in July of 90. I woke up with my alcoholism this morning. Tom I used to say, he is 40 years sober at this point. He'd say, if I woke up tomorrow and had a desire to drink, I would not be surprised, nor would I be unprepared. I'm not afraid to tell you how good it gets here. And I just came through 3 years in the desert, man. When I hit 30 years, it felt like my entire world burned to the ground. And in some important ways, there was a lot lost during those 3 years. I can either remember and focus on everything that was lost, or rather concentrate on everything that was left. And about 4 weeks ago, I turned my will and my life over to God one more time, and enters a little newcomer. She weighs 15 pounds and 7 ounces, and she has 4 legs, and her name is Mia. That little dog needs a program. I mean, I try to read to her out of the literature every night, and she's like, step away, I can't hear. La 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 la. She was in with some folks, and when I saw the condition she was living in, I said to those people, I said, I'll buy her from you. I will give you money if you will give me the dog. And that's what happened. I drove 6 hours to go get her. I saw her in a picture. I drove 6 hours to go get her, turned right back around and drove 6 hours home. When she got here, she was completely covered in fleas. She had ticks in her ears. Her fur was so matted. She doesn't know how to wear a collar. She doesn't understand what a leash is. She doesn't understand that she's supposed to pee and poop outdoors, because all she learned to do was pee and poop indoors, and apparently wherever she wanted. So we'd have classes already. We've had classes on the pee pad and its functions, and I explained to her, and she apparently is working that direction, but she will consistently pee about 4 inches off the edge of the pee pad. So we're working on her aim. That little girl, every day. I got home a little while ago. I'm wondering how come everybody doesn't shake their butt like that when I come into a room. Come on, people. Her little butt just like, whoa. And I was only gone like for half an hour. Don't tell her. Don't tell her. She was so happy. And her tail's like this. And she's like, I thought you died and left me. And then rolls over on her back. And I'm like, okay, I'm teaching her how to breathe. Just because she's all excited. And I'm like, okay, take a deep breath. Hold it. Release it. And when I open my eyes again, she's like, you are so weird. Oh my God, why did God put me here? Help me, God. She's working her own program, apparently. And I say all that to you because I did not understand on those hard days, on those dark days, on those empty days that we were on our way to my experience with true, unadulterated love. And so the first thing I knew is exactly what God knew when I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous, is that this little girl, she needs a kennel. That's what we call sponsors in AA, a kennel, a place to go and rest and reflect on my behavior. Because I continue to miss the pee pad from time to time. And I'm just going to read something to you before I close. You've been so gracious. I appreciate those of you who are still awake. I will pray for the folks that left early, and just if you knew them, tell them I understand. In the 12 and 12, it says, still more wonderful is the feeling that we do not have to be specially distinguished among our fellows in order to be useful and profoundly happy. Service gladly rendered, obligations squarely met, troubles well accepted or solved with God's help, the knowledge that at home that we are partners in a common effort, that the knowledge that at home and in the world, it's a well understood fact that in God's sight all human beings are important. The truth that love freely given surely brings a full return, that we need no longer be square pegs trying to fit in round holes, but that we belong in God's scheme of things. These are the permanent results of good living, for which no amount of pomp and circumstance, no heap of material possessions could ever substitute. True ambition is not what we thought it to be. True ambition is a deep desire to live usefully and to walk humbly in the grace of God. May all of God's love be mine. May all of God's love be yours. May all of God's love be with us all, this God or something better. Amen. That's it. Thank you.